Okay, 1, 2, 3. Are we ready?
Well, I'd like to throw this to Anne because, in fact, I had some ideas for titles, but it was her suggestion and it's her lineage. So
Yes, outrider. So the outrider is a kind of sheep herder or cattle, comes from the Old West, maybe goes further deep into indigenous practices. So you're riding alongside and you're kind of shepherding the flock, the flow. You're make sure nobody gets hurt, off the path, stampede, and so on. So it comes from this more, tradition in a different kind of landscape, certainly, than I've grown up in New York City. And I became acquainted with it in Colorado. And it came up as a very good term to sort of push up against the outsider. So they talk about the outsider and, of course, the Beat lineage and the other experimental lineages of my time. My elders were very experimental, radical, their lives and so on. And I think there's one book that refers to, Burroughs as a kind of almost criminal-like or inside, and, nobody else is experiencing this, and it's dark, illegal, fellaheen world. But this is very fellaheen in a way, going to another kind of movement. Also, for me, it suggests the motion. There's a whole idea of the path, that you're on the path. Nobody is begging you to be a poet. You must have a career as a poet. You must study how to do poetry and, make a lot of money. So it's liberating as a term, and it worked with the incredible sort of landscape we have in Colorado. Alystyre does some beautiful filming from a drone actually above, just seeing the terrain and the body, I'm kind of moving, almost dancing forward. So it sort of worked. I like that it's simple, and people can confuse it a little bit with outsider. And so you can discuss how it's very much trying to be there to help. Poetry can help wake the world up to itself.
Yeah. And it's also like a guide. It's also a guide, and it's also, I think, vast, because I think it guided the film in a way that, the way we edited it even, and we used some of the lines from Anne's poem, Outrider. A long poem, which is 30 pages, and it's a book called Outrider. Mm-hmm. So it very much drove the film in a way. This discovering, myself discovering the word more, and it's her life and her work. So,
but it works as this like a poem itself. The film is it's very cinematic, and the sound and the visuals and so on. And so it works for that. And we needed a kind of recurrent theme, like an undertone coming back to Outrider. It's so simple. It's not complicated to understand. I mean, we all have outriders inside us.
It's a point of view to go towards, yeah.
What is your weapon?
Big mouth.
We did know each other before. I had taken Anne's workshops, been to the Jack Kerouac's school, university, Jack Kerouac University, and early in my life, in my 20s, and then, so we knew each other, and I think it just, something was building in me, but I did feel this one performance at the Bowery Poetry Club that I had already been thinking about making a project like this, about lives of poets, and it just became very apparent that what Anne was channeling with the activism inherent in the poetry and her performance, and embodied it all kind of, I mean, I feel goosebumps even now talking about it. You know, it just was very clear. I saw this call in a way to make this project and start following her work.
What was I reading that night? Was I strangling Dick Cheney?
I didn't have a camera, I didn't have a cell phone, I had nothing, you know, I've tried to get that recording from an archive.
I thought it was the reading with Aquila.
It was with Anne Lauterbach.
Oh, okay.
The one with Aquila was the first we filmed.
We filmed
at,
that. That was the first.
Dixon Place, yeah, and that's in the film, yeah.
So for me, she was also a neighbor, and she lived across the street, and when we knew we were making this, she always had a camera, and she was coming to everything I was doing for this period of time, my kind of aging time, and then there was all this earlier things to cover, and I would look out the window. Is she out there with her camera? Can I go out of my house?
I didn't know she was doing that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I would think about, oh gosh, do I need to put on some lipstick?
Anne? Yeah. Hi. I have the camera on. Is that okay?
Okay, sure, I'll come in the room. Just give me a sec.
Right.
How long the shooting? How long?
A decade, but it wasn't.
A decade. Okay.
It wasn't 24/7. It wasn't every week. It started gradually in a particular year, and then and it covered this body of work, which I find so rich. This period of work, and so it became more frequent, and also more regular. Going to the Jack Kerouac School every summer, going to Morocco twice, repeating a lot of things to find layers. And
that was so exciting for me because I felt the books I was publishing during that period were very important, and kind of working with documentary poetics, working with the travel, working with the times we're in, but as a scholar, student, more than constantly complaining. There's dramatic end of the world rage and all that, but there was a lot to cover. And I had finished by then, I think, it's a 1,000-page poem, epic poem.
Okay.
One book called the Iovis Trilogy. So it went over, that was over time. I mean, I took a vow, it was about 20 years. And I started it in the 80s, and then so some of that is reflected. And of course, the way it ends, the Book of Thel from Blake. I'm inspired by a particular poem of Blake's. And then the other thing was I've forgotten what the poems are at the end, sort of towards the end of the movie.
yes,
Mustafa.
right. That's from Manatee.
That's a little later than Manatee, but okay. Manatee is in there, which is the beautiful footage of the animal by a poet friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we drew in some other material, of course, and documentary style.
Yeah.
But her brilliance as a filmmaker is like poetry, and writes poetry herself, Alystyre writes. But connecting, there'll be an image, and then the next shot carries that. Or it can be a moment where, I recognize the waterfall, and it's in somebody's painting, and it's in this actual place. It's in, the Henry Miller Center in Big Sur, which is an important place. That's where many beat events happened, and Lawrence Ferlinghetti lived and all that. And then there'll be, connections between the print shop we have at Europa. There's a cylinder, and you hear the word cylinder, and then the next shot. But they're not all narrative-based or time-based. This is the beginning, this is the middle,
by
this is the end.
association.
Yeah, association,
Kind of
which is very much like poetry.
Associative, yeah.
It is the cylinder of alphabets. It is the sway of geese treads. It is footprints of every extant and extinct thing. It is fossils. It is memory and room. It is challenge. It holds mind and indication. It is a swift summation.
And COVID was an interruption. We had to kind of take, our lives seriously.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
There's one shot with a mask.
One or two
shots.
shots with a mask, yeah.
To expose him. I was in love with him. That was the problem. I always get angry. Of course. Wife, mistresses, family, position.
Yes, I think it's just through a series of connections that thankfully we have through Anne, and we're able to reach the person that would handle that material, and they would give us
and I was
fairly
on the
easily.
Rolling Thunder, so, and then there was Scorsese's movie of his own, which Alan is very much in. I'm in it for a moment, I think in a scene with Joni Mitchell or something, and I get a credit. So he was accessible, and I think because he's also from Greenwich Village, Martin Scorsese grew up in the neighborhood, and he's so generous with younger filmmakers, which is great.
We each had a few connections, and we used them.
The woman absconding, the absent woman, the transparent woman, the absent woman, the woman of swords, the woman under tyranny, the contemporary woman, the mocking woman, the artist dreaming inside her house. I'm the gadget woman, I'm the druid woman, I'm the Evo woman, I'm the Yoruba woman.
I think he and his family was traveling on the film, and things were changing. I think that, it always impressed me how, my friends like Thurston Moore and his marriage, how as artists, there's something that people can come to as a way of continuing to be able to work together. I've done it myself in my own life. I really take that seriously as a woman, as a feminist, that you are there also for who you are, your work, what you contribute, and when you're collaborating, even in a relationship, artistic relationship, it's important that that's honored. So I felt very good about that. The poem, Fast Speaking Woman, the recording is, I was actually dressed, they wanted me dressed as an American Indian. I was, this is so absurd and having to, anyway, I won't go into naming names, but I went along because I felt, well, there might be some point to this, maybe. I hope it's not, we aren't going to see that. But I was reading behind the waterfall at Niagara Falls. So it's interesting, there's an actual, very important site in American romantic history where you get married and you go to the Niagara Falls to bless your wedding and marriage. And it was such a wild ride anyway, the Rolling Thunder Revue people performing every night and meeting people who you didn't know because they set it up so they didn't know, the town didn't know that they were coming to town until 24 hours before.
Sure hope to get to Boston on time.
And then they'd sell tickets or give tickets away and so on. So you were always on this edge of a new manifestation of the show itself. And then, so these funny combinations behind, the backstories were always interesting. But the fact that I'm reading over the sound of a waterfall, and then the poem itself is indebted to a great Mexican poet, Maria Sabina. Very, very important, a folk hero. And the footage we have of her is from a very dear friend who's a poet herself, lives in Mexico City. Her father filmed it. Her father knew Maria Sabina. So you see a bit of her in ceremony in the film, the candles and her incredible face. And that poem was very important. It's an all-night velada where she takes guides, people partaking of the hongos, and through a vision, which is in a female body, this woman, that woman, I'm the woman who this, I'm the woman who that. And it's very syncretic in that it borrows on, Christian imagery and so on. So I heard that first in her Mazatec language on a recording that had been made probably in the 50s. And it just hit me that every woman could do this, and every man could do. In fact, Michael McClure wrote his version of Fast Speaking Man. So I think he has another title, I don't know. Anyway, but he said to me, I'm writing a male version. I said, okay, great.
The next poet, she was born in Greenwich Village. She has affairs with books. She writes, publishes, copulates, and gives birth to books. She's Anne Waldman.
Well, having worked very closely with Allen Ginsberg, knowing him well, living at his farm, traveling to Boulder together, spending time in a Buddhist seminary at Lake Louise in Canada for 3 months together, him knowing my family and so on in Cherry Valley. And then his spirit as a poet in the world, and this idea of getting poetry out in public space. That was always, as a young person, that was my vision for poetry, that it was time for it to be more in public space. But also I'm an obsessive writer. And, you know, sometimes that's not focused on. It's fine. I do it. I'm kind of like to study. I like to work with documentary, with a big idea. The new section of this ongoing kind of subject matter is called elucidarium, as if you're in an alchemical lab. And, you know, right now with the world being what it is and on this edge of collecting, making sure things can exist in the archive for future young people to know. I mean, it could all be smithereens and we'll, you know, be lost for a long, dark age. Yeah. But in terms of the Kali Yuga, the fifth extinction of Mayan practice and so on, it's, you know, before it gets better, it's going to get harder, and more things will disappear from the world, not to mention our incredible fauna, and, you know, it's just insane, the lack of attention to the planet Earth and what we need to do. And for a while it seemed 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, talk of saving our biosphere. I mean, it's just nothing is going on. It's worse. It's just getting worse.
Before sixth extinction.
Yeah. And so, you know, a nuclear war, the endless wars, it's such a challenge, and I just have to go with it. The challenge, I mean, to resist. And as a poet, you have poetic tools. One of my students says that in the movie, you know, something about my vision for the school. And we have, you know, she said, we're supposed to be activists, but all we have is poetic tools. You know, very modest, a pencil.
Activist, you'd say, art
activist. Yeah. Artivist. So that was key, I think, to the sense of the beat lineage as well. Of course, I was close to Diane de Prima. She was there at the beginning of Naropa as a Buddhist. You know, many Buddhist components to the various people working with Gary Snyder, Philip Whalen, Alan himself, all very interested in consciousness and the fact that there's nothing exactly outside that's going to save you. You know, if you trust in a deity, you know, and get very kind of theistic about it, it's not like we're all going to... So, you know, it's hard to fight the evangelical thing that's very inherent in American culture, this idea there's a great day of reckoning and we're all going to be saved and lifted into heaven. So, anyway, yeah. So, you know, it's up to us, and it's so remarkable to see people working in film because it's close, but it's very complicated, you know, the sense of sustaining, and then in real time that people see this with, you know, you need what you need to do that, and what you need to do, you lock in your vision. I mean, with a book, you can still improvise and change it around, you know, work with the structure. So it's a very impressive. My partner is a filmmaker who Alystyre knows as well.
He's been a mentor, yeah.
I've been a kind of mentor and helpful, but it's so similar, the kind of what you were saying about the shape and the movement and the rhythms. But I feel that my deities of the lineage of the new American poetry and the beats is like very strong to make this. There was no movie quite like this.
And I was really interested in just this exploration of this poetic consciousness, and I just have that interest already. I mean, it seems very general, but I mean, I'm also coming from Buddhist and yogic communities that, so that's part of, you know, I'm kind of following Anne's vows to the Dharma and to poetry, but also that I share some of those threads very deeply. So it's just going further to see that on film through the work, through her work, yeah.
Oh, she's a wizard. Alchemist.
Well, we came after Alan when we founded this press. It was with the poet Ron Patchett and a film curator, more of an art curator, Joan Simon. And we just had this, I've forgotten how many books we did, but we had a book of Philippe Soupeau, translated by I think William Carlos Williams and his mother. And we had William Burroughs's letters to Alan and William. And we had incredible things to put, there's small editions, full court press, which is a basketball term. When a basketball, one team is pressing, down the stadium, down to do, over the top. So I remember when Ron said, and we should call it full court press. I said, what is that about? What does that mean? So, so a history with Alan, founding the school, being, students together in Dharma, traveling. I traveled a lot with Alan in Europe and other places, and his connection to India. I went to India, I think first, maybe 10 years after he had gone. I met people in Calcutta. And just, his way of opening doors. And then the kind of faithfulness of the friends, of the community. The poet Robert Creeley talks about, this kind of community of friends, company of friends that sustain you. And I see the relationships in that community, the older generation of poets really, they have falling outs and you don't agree and this and that, and steal each other's wives, I don't know. Whatever goes on, but you keep it going. You stay on the path. You're the outrider. You have to keep going. You can't take sides. Exactly. And Amiri Baraka is very important. Well, Amiri is consistent. I mean, he was Leroy Jones when I met him. He was already had been. He and Diane DePrima had a child together. They'd founded a very important magazine called sort of based on the Winnie the Pooh title. And they were active on the downtown scene. Amiri finally felt because of his political calling to Black community, he needed to leave the village. But he never broke his friendship with Frank O'Hara or Allen Ginsberg, key poets in his life. And he has a whole beat period. They consider this chunk of his writing 50s, 60s as being part of, if you analyze his work and where it goes. I think all those things are in him simultaneously. Jazz, and he follows popular culture. And we've had, conversations about movies. He liked Bette Davis or something, He'd be watching classic movies, like most of us, in the middle of the night on a black and white screen, early TV. And he was just one of the family. And so he's in the film, and he says some very important line. I'll save it for you to see. But came repeatedly to Naropa during our summer program and taught. I thought this is so great for the students to have a firsthand revolutionary, controversial figure. And he suffered a lot. He, had been poet laureate at a school, and that was taken away because of his comments on the fall of the towers. And, everybody, anytime you start getting political with this or that or taking sides, it's controversial. And he was hounded by the government, of course. I mean, you have to remember there were files on Allen, on Baraka, on Burroughs. FBI.
So it's a hard gig because you find yourself always on the other side of what public wisdom.
Hoover went from tackling, Emma Goldman to John Lennon. That's how long he was in power. That is crazy. You think about Emma Goldman, I mean, that's way back. And I'm thinking of old New York and all of that. And then John Lennon being hounded, and he went through that whole thing about being a citizen of New York. So, yeah, Hoover was, I watched the movie finally. There's a movie, Hoover.
What did you say?
I watched it on the plane. There was nothing else. I said, I need a history lesson. I'll watch this movie. And it showed a few things, his relationship with his gay friend, and then his obsession at an early age, just about having to get people and whatever. I don't ever feel sorry for him, but I wish somebody had just busted his psyche, just put him on a spot where he had to be more empathetic or compassionate for himself. And I don't know, damage, so much damage.
Poetry is so dangerous. It's dangerous. Keeps out of commodification. Fun hog time.
has more to do with jazz than folk. We saw Dylan recently in Bruxelles.
Bob Dylan?
In the concert.
Yeah.
He just come.
And it's always like a jam session. When he's in live, it's like jazz.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. No, I think very sympathetic and in the same. I mean, you had his. The director of Columbia Records lived down the block from me, and then Dylan was living also on the street in the village, McDougal Street. And I think how did I first meet Dylan? Maybe through Alan. Alan was helping record. They were recording at the Something Lady studio, Electric Lady, where Jimi Hendrix, and I also met Jimi Hendrix down the block, just on the street, and Bob Dylan was there, and then my family, my older brother was very involved with the folk scene in Greenwich Village every weekend at Washington Square Park. I wish we had footage.
We tried
of my brother.
I wish,
So the neighborhood. So the neighborhood, it had jazz going, it had folk music, it had later, pop and stuff. But I think I agree. Musicians are musicians. They aren't saying, I want to be labeled this and I'm that. And then how, people have worked together. And then what was the other question about just the music? Because my grandson, not my grandson, not yet, my nephew is a serious jazz player, Devin Waldman. He's very much in the soundtrack, and you see him playing. He talks briefly. My son Ambrose is keyboard, and he's done a lot of editing for others. And Ambrose, he's very funny in the movie. That's what gets the most laughs, me with my son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a little
family time. Original music, mostly fast-speaking music, and another friend, Max Davies, and a lot of...
James Brandon Lewis, do you know who he is? He's kind of a rising star, African-American, also sax. You'll go online, great musician, elder musician like Daniel Carter.
Thurston Moore.
You have Thurston Moore is very much behind, he's not being Thurston Moore, like superstar. He's back of me. We travel together in certain instances.
Including
we'll play
in
together
Brussels.
in London. What?
Including in Brussels. There was
in Brussels. We were here together.
There's a scene.
There's a Brussels recording. That's right. You should mention it tomorrow. And then the rest of the question was interesting. Something about
the link between jazz, Bob Dylan, and your poem about jazzman who is a jazzman who Bob Dylan loved him too.
Yeah. Oh, and in his broadcast, I don't know if you follow everything. Some people just follow everything Bob says and does. Very, very much of his time and listens all the time. I'm trying to think of an instance where on the tour it got jazzier, or sometimes there'd be a guest appearance. But mainly, the pop world kind of keeps its, it's the traveling caravan. It's so much a part of the pop culture, the popular culture, and those kinds of, and I always felt poetry is at the root of all the people I know, and it's very much at the root of the jazz world as well. So poetry is a link, I think, definitely, and word working. Sometimes you can't hear the words, but you always hear Bob Dylan's words, always. It's amazing. Every time somebody plays something, they say, what do you think? I said, well, I tell you, I don't hear the words, so I don't like it.
But also I think you were saying, this includes poetry being so influenced by the jazz music, like Robert Cooley was saying. He was really influenced by.
When did you first hear jazz?
All my life, because my father's always listened to it. He's a huge jazz. Listener.
Yeah, that was often, my mother loved Cecil Taylor. She took me to hear Cecil Taylor when I was pretty young. And then I got to know him, and we brought him to the Poetry Project to read his poetry, not necessarily play, and we brought him to Naropa. And when he came to Naropa, he needed a very fancy piano we had to rent. It was like our whole budget for the week. Something Dorfer, famous piano. What's the
Dorfer?
Yeah, the last syllables. Bersendorfer or something Dorfer. We can look it up.
Like the Steinway, you know.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
Dorfer, I think.
Is it still there?
No, we had to get it to the high school. Oh. We had a bigger arena for Cecil. But he played, and then he read brief, but the poetry project we had him, it was basically for his poetry. But he was wild. He came one summer and he needed champagne and everything, and he was having a big party where people were going in the swimming pool with their clothes on, and the head of the hotel, because Alan and I were essentially inviting and then running it, and you know, small staff. You have to come over and get your guest, Cecil Taylor. He's running around dressed in saran wrap or something. I said, okay, whatever.
Thank you for getting this, because this is not in the film.
No, this is not in the film. This is very private stuff. No, he was genius. He's a genius. I just wrote a long piece. It's in a book about Cecil. It'll be an anthology of people writing, and it's a take on a poem of his. It's kind of in homage. So all that, just growing up around jazz, and it continues. We're both connected to the New Blue people. There's a whole
Arts for Arts,
William Vision Parker. Festival. William Parker, who's my age, very important, almost like father figure to so many younger musicians. And he and his partner, who's a wonderful dancer, they opened spaces just for we can all go.
It's happening when we get back, in fact.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I think it needs to be the city, of course, and then the roots in a kind of consciousness. It's poetry is one simple way of saying it, and also the juxtaposition, how you work with time. It's complicated. Improvisation.
Yeah, improvisation. And that really, to an extent, really drives the film. I think the music, the music that was around this time. And that it was in the collaborations.
And then when I perform a collaboration with Meredith Monk. And it's my text, but she's inside the text. We're opposite. She filmed it so beautifully at St. Mark's Church, where from the balcony you filmed?
No, just in the center.
In the center, but we're at opposite sides of the screen in a way, and continue that. And then we're improvising.
There's shadows come together in a part.
On the same screen, but it could be
just
two
one background.
Realms. Yeah. No, that's very special. Just the filming of that as a, performative stance.
And that piece, that poem, Hungry Ghost.
Hungry Ghost.
Yeah.
The fix is in for the hungry ghost. I was thinking of William Burroughs.
Yeah.
It's a Buddhist term for the hungry, people who just continue to be hungry, whether they're alive or dead or beyond.
Can never have enough, be enough.
Never have enough.
Get enough.
The fix is in for the hungry ghost, yearning for existence. The fix is in, hungry ghost of the Jurassic, large omnivores, starving you with appetite.
It's not in the forefront, but I think it's just inherent in some way. And we have trickster feminism, but I think it's in every text in some way, and it's through as by example, being.
We don't go. What we didn't want was having to do this history lesson, and so we avoided those kinds of terminology, I guess. And we didn't want a lot of. There are a few talking heads. We didn't want a lot of commentators like this. She's okay, or a white male professor talking. So, all the women who appear, like Meredith, also Laurie
Monk,
briefly, Laurie.
They're
all very Buddhist feminists. Patty had done this thing about my book, and we had permission to use her 3 times.
Pat Steer. All the collaborations are with women and
very empowered women.
Very empowered women that have gone to a very different place than the 50s model. So it's kind of by example that.
In your own life.
Yeah. But it's kind of a loose in terms of context sometimes, but we wanted it that way because it's more, again, improvisational and experimental in some way, but So it's almost just like it's more of an experience than a more academic view.
And then we didn't want like a historic narrative, born here, did this, did that, and there's, references to archival matter, but it's not it can move around. That's what people have commented on. It can be simultaneous times going on that work because of the editing and the rhythms of that and the connections, and
And the film is about the making of the work in a way, and just continual making of work, and so that in itself is an example.
You'll see my child in it, but I took him with me on a lot of the trips. Ambrose is now in his 40.
40.
Yeah, he's now.
Like us,
Yeah, like you, young.
Yes.
So he's home in Mexico, just taking care of his daughter.
Yeah.
His daughter's now 6 years old. He's the house husband. Natalia, his wife, is wonderful. She's a filmmaker. She's the one who goes out for a job.
She's a film.
Natalia, Gaia, Anaya.
They're short videos, mostly on people wanting, collaboration with her. She did a short documentary on a project that I helped pull together, of going and working in a school in Oaxaca, high in the mountains, for musicians. It starts in kindergarten and it goes to high school. And up there, it's above the cloud. It's so magical. It's been there 40 years, and all the students play brass instruments, which come from the church tradition through Spain. So 17th century, it's called, I think, banda, this name for this kind of music, and it's not the music of the church, but the instruments are brass. So I took my sax player friends, and we also had two cellos. And so a community of, 7 of us poets from Mexico, a couple of gringos, and Natalia did a little film, 15 minutes. And she's done some things with me, almost like, could be on MTV, because they're usually around a poem or a song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of her footage is in the film a little bit here and there, sprinkled throughout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any shot you see of Mexico, I'm on the roof.
There's a long credits.
Yeah, very long. It's very impressive. People sit there watching for all these names, but what the things.
They were like, I had no idea how many people were involved.
10 minutes.
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Actually, 7. Yeah. There's so many, but since we really recently saw Poetry in Motion as part of a Robert Creeley program.
Do you know that film made in Canada? Poetry in Motion from the 80s.
It was from the 80s, but by Ron Mann.
M-A-N-N. He made a great movie. First movie I saw of his was Imagine the Sound. It has Cecil in it, Cecil Taylor.
So anyway, there was a beautiful scene with Diane de Prima reading a poem about light and the way it was shot. There was just beautiful light around her, and she just looked like this angel. And I think I'm, still discovering the depth of her work, and I would say Diane de Prima.
Okay.
Joanne Kiger, very important to me, also another Buddhist compañera, and was married to Gary Snyder, lived in Japan. She had an interesting, intense relationship with him. They were very different. She wrote a great journal of their trip traveling with Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky, herself, and Gary Snyder. And they all did journals. They're very, very different. But she's saying, I just came, they would criticize her. She didn't have the right clothes for hiking, and I'm just standing around in my drip dry black dress waiting for some wild martini attention. I just love her. She's so funny. And Gary, and then when they were kind of getting apart, he left a list of all her faults of her. She left water in the drinking glass. She didn't do the dishes. She talk about feminism. That brings it all home. It's just like, what? This is what we're putting up with. Some way she was reading cheap detective novels or something, romance books in her spare time. Insane. Leaving it for her to read 10 things, So, yeah. Joanne also very, very present at Naropa. Diane de Prima. And then there's, Janine Vega, who a little bit younger, who spent time in South America and has a beautiful early City Lights book. A lot of people were first published by City Lights.
I've been immersed lately in a lot of Black Mountain poets, so have been a little immersed there
It's a school,
for a while.
Black Mountain,
Yeah.
important school. From what years?
It's from, well, it was from 1933 to 1957. Yeah.
Included John Cage and Merce Cunningham,
Charles Olson, Robert Creeley, Denise Levertov.
Yeah, Denise was important
Hilda
as well.
Morley, yeah.
Very interesting experiment. The first, trying to be this art school, the first black student in North Carolina.
In the South, yeah.
In the South. And that was radical. And also the people were coming from the Bauhaus, who were getting out of Nazi Germany. The Bauhaus, Joseph Albers taught there architecture, and his wife Annie Albers was a wonderful artist who did weaving, sculptures and weaving. Yeah, they were important. And the vision of kind of different kind of education, which was very important when Alan and I were thinking about how do we make a school? I mean, I had a BA in poetry, but not in, higher education. Well, thinking about the making of the movie being montage, collage.
Yes.
And Burroughs talks also about writing is like cutting.
Yes, and I think of just the way you're performing and also just looking at your work on the page and listening to you, and I don't know, it feeds in, but also the way you work with your students, it comes through there. But I've always loved this form.
I think we grew up. I mean, I knew about surrealism from a pretty early age. Something my parents were following in any visual. Going to the Museum of Modern Art, so much surrealist art. Reading de Chirico's, there's a novel by him, so interesting. Dream Life, syntax, all of that, syntax, very, very clear. But you feel like they're real roots here for the poets, And then the poets that Ferlinghetti also has had published more labeled surrealist poets. Some people are very clear, more spare, not a lot of imagery, not a lot of things in the poems, but then there are people who are poets who are more comfortable with that and bringing in strands. No, I like being here, listening to the younger poets, and all. It's very intergenerational as well as these other communities I work in.
Yeah.
Just finding where are they from, what are they reading? Yeah. Who are there was all women yesterday. That was interesting, and you were playing consistently, and it was so varied. Everybody was different. Yeah. I grew up on MacDougall Street in Greenwich Village, the park, and so on, and the jazz and the folk scene and all that going on. Even, the jazz clubs, very much in the village, and the people hanging out. So Pete Seeger, the folk singer, lived down the block, and and Peggy Seeger and so on, and they had, for children, a hootenanny. Hootenanny was, and they were open. They were probably scheduled sessions. I mean, I was a little older than the time. I was told I was on. I know that he was in the house, but we were down from where Dylan and these other people were. It's a whole story about how we happened to live there. My father came back from World War II. He'd been in Germany and so on, and then he was going to school on the GI Bill and working as he came from a working class family, South Jersey, glassblowers, etc. But anyway, they both had earlier lives. My mother had lived in Greece for a decade. So anyway, they're in this kind of rooming house, and the bottom floor was Ed. He had a son, and my age, and we would be down there. He worked in early TV writing, but all very progressive. And my father was probably a commie, caring person, but because he had lived in Provincetown near John Dos Passos, and he was married to the daughter of a very radical writer, Mary Heaton Vorse, still very well known, her name. She was important. She knew John Reed. So all these political connections. So anyway, Seeger was very close to Leadbelly, and Leadbelly would come, Hetty Ledbetter would come to the neighborhood, and there were places to perform there. And then his work is so, Irene Goodnight, some of those songs. But anyway, I evidently was on his lap and told this by my family. And I didn't quite get how radical that was. And also, like, you know, I remember Patti Smith just saying, "You should say that. You know, it's like a blessing. You know, it's you had a job to do if you get the permission to sit on the lap."
At your house?
At my own house, but not. We weren't even in the downstairs yet. We were in a little apartment way up, and we got the house. I eventually lived in more of it when there was a crisis and the dog ran out and the water was dripping from the top floor, and the owners were saying, we're leaving New York, it's too wild. This is in the 50s. It's getting too wild and noisy. She's lived there many years, McDougal. Yeah. It's insane. Yeah.
That's a good block.
Here's a piece called Beat Roots, and I just love the first sentence. Once on the drug, we were traveling.
I think Ted Berrigan was I got a call from Ted, who was a great fan of Jackson, had gotten to see him and did a very important interview that was in the Paris Review, and I was supposed to go with Ted, and I couldn't for some reason in my life. And, you know, everybody was just shattered. He was so young, but also destructive, self-destructive, not, you know, just his mood. And he was very conservative politically and just getting worn down, but still, you know, brilliant, loved. I think he's very sustained in his work. I mean, it carries. We have a student who graduated from Europa, a trans student, male to female, who's obsessed with the beats and obsessed with, you know, Kerouac and knows all the histories. And I said, this should be a poster child for the new age, you know, just so much interest of women. I was just at this conference in Lisbon, run by two women who are sort of Blake scholars, and they love Alan's Blake songs. You know, he put the songs of innocence and experience and also some earlier Blake poems to music. And they love it. They feel they're completely honoring Alan's centenary around this connection to William Blake. And in London, we're also doing something, going to Blake's cottage, Thurston Moore and other scholars of Alan and so on. So there's just a, you know, a connection to all of these guys and so on. But you know, the thing with Kerouac is drove Alan. I think Alan wouldn't be the poet he became without Kerouac. Many of the other people speak of his, you know, extraordinary attention to his writing and his consciousness, and you know, he would go off on and also being. We named it the Jack Kerouac School at Europa because he was immigrant. He was coming from. You know, what they call it, the joual, his French Canadian, and he wrote a version of On the Road in Quebecois, and he was, you know, working class, interesting family dynamic. Then he was going to an expensive school because he was gifted in sports, and then he was going to college because of that. And then there was always this yearning in him, you know, to travel to Merchant Marine and, you know, just going down below the borders, investigating life, being in love and following that. So this was liberating. And I think, and William needed help kind of getting located to have his friends help with On the Road. Alan was an incredible, you know, dynamic magician in some ways with these friends. I mean, he met Gregory Corso in a bar. Gregory had been in prison. Just everybody's story was so unaligned with this is post-war, where we're supposed to be worshiping our new, I don't know, stove after the war. Remember, my parents were bohemian, and so it was sort of, how do we fit in? You know. Anyway, you know, Kerouac, extremely important. And he had this spirituality.
Yeah. That was touched on a lot at this conference that we came from in Lisbon, and just so much continued, renewed interest and study going on there.
Yeah, with Kerouac. And also, they're developing, the Friends of Kerouac, and a huge church, the church where Kerouac went in Lowell, And they even have the confessional, where you tell confession with the priest. And I was joking about, you can make money. You can come and confess at the very site where Kerouac confessed. See if you can match his sins. But it's amazing. It's huge. They're planning, you know, a whole rock and roll concerts and big time. There could be a new chapter in the Beat saga. I mean, you know, the family of his Stella, it's mainly from that side. I know some of those people, I mean, their intentions are good, but they're younger and want to bring, you know, rock and roll and put some of Jack's lyrics to, we'll see. Mm-hmm. You have to let, you know, the new generations.
The new big generation.
They killed the air. They killed the air. They killed the water. They killed the water. They killed each other. They killed each other. They killed language. They killed language.
When the world gets more weird, I think, I mean, I'm seeing that kind of happen. And when essential freedoms, like freedom of speech, and freedom, and then the trials of Ginsburg with how the stuff with Burroughs, I mean, all these things will be under examination. How could they censor, you know, just creative work, creative poetry? I mean, I'm trying to think, there's so many examples right now of people being shut down, all these graduation speeches at colleges, you can't go if you talk about the war, if you talk about Palestine, if you talk about students, they're not letting students give speeches at graduation, or professors, and this is across the board. The government, Trump government, is just looking for every opportunity they have to you know, turn it their way towards just stealing, I mean, getting the money, getting the power. So I think that I'm seeing that that's leading to greater interest in why, you know, what is it? What is this with Baraka, say? You know, anytime you start to, because I get letters from high school students, and letters to Naropa. Somebody will be in the war. We have a student who was in Afghanistan a while ago. He's still at the school getting his MA, very active. Huck, he's like a reliable student, activist, and he's just, it saved his life. That's how people put it. So it might be slow and gradual. I think, there's honoring Alan for the centenary. There's so much response in other countries, let's put it that way. And I got a letter from India wanting me to come. They have a Calcutta book fair for Alan. Alan spent time in Calcutta. So it might be, they're not dead yet. But I know what you're saying, because, you know, you don't see the, I don't know if there are many more stories that can be told, or, you know, kind of salacious pop, because they got very famous on their, you know, all these extreme stories of their behavior, and Peter and Alan being naked somewhere, and I don't know, wearing the American flag hat, drugs. Alan was telling everybody to take LSD. The early years of Naropa, I'd get letters from students, I really like what you're doing, but Allen Ginsberg told everybody to take LSD, and I blame him. He ruined my life. No, I'm hopeful. What?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if this ties in, but what I really love about this work, this body of work and Anne's work, is the investigative nature of it. And I think that does find in some way it must find its roots in the Beat generation.
Yeah, and Olson to some extent, but just going further, looking at not just your school, you know. I'm so grateful for what I could study, and then I took me to Blake. I had a Blake class, but yeah, that's the other thing, just looking at when you start to look at the work of the Beats among each other, the recollections and letters, they're all talking about literature and the past and what book they've read, their philosophy, religion, other writers loving, you know, everybody loves Rimbaud, but, you know, really on that level of, oh, I'm so turned on by this and that. And great that Patti Smith keeps things alive. You know, she was at the Pessoa Center, and they had all of Pessoa's, I mean, it's a smallish library in the basement, and Patti said, people can't read it, get it, so they moved it up so the public can see. And she helped with some Rimbaud. I mean, she has the wherewithal to help. So a lot of our generation is so I don't say invest, I mean spiritually invested in that these things are available, and they're just books. Yeah. I mean, how can you just burn them all? They're burning books in Texas. These books would be burned in Texas.
So active nemesis, were you there at the beginning, black, dumb, tongueless?
This was the place that plutonium was being brought in to make the triggers for the nuclear warheads. A lot of the demonstrations had to do with sitting on those railroad tracks. Ellen, myself, Daniel Ellsberg, many others were arrested.
No, it's so important, all this. So I feel her movie, younger people, women especially, have been, speaking up, how they feel more confident seeing it, just seeing a life and seeing an old woman, still working. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your...
Okay. Thank you.
More energy than anyone. Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
You do with Phil. This is a wonderful movie. It's great. I really like it.